This is Mark Hill, and I am the Traveling NP. Um, I've kind of started getting back into doing some videos. I have decided to do some primary care provider centered videos related to what we do in the primary care setting. But I had a bad snow day today. Roads are impassable, so I got stuck at home, and so I thought I would do another traveling NP video. This video is going to be primarily for people who are interested in traveling locum tenens, nurse practitioners, PAs, MDs, and really, I guess it could apply for other people in the medical field as well. I have been out of the full-time locums work now for the last 8 or 9 months. I still do some weekend locums assignments, but primarily I do a primary care gig in a small clinic. But I did and still do enjoy doing locums work. I had a couple of people over the last several months. I get contacted all the time for advice on how to get started in this business and how to get going as a locums provider and who to contact and so I thought I would do a video today based primarily on that. I'm just going to get down to the nuts and bolts of it. I have worked for 4 different locums companies. Medcare Staffing was one. I primarily did telemed coverage with them. I did staff care. I did a lot of work with staff care at one point. I did Wilderness Medical. It's a regional staffing locums company, primarily staffing Montana, Washington, Wyoming, and I do a lot of staffing in Alaska. And I worked full-time as a locums provider with National Medical Resources out of Bismarck, North Dakota. And when I say full-time, I have a video on making that jump to a full-time locums on staff, which was a very good experience for me. Made really, really good money during that time. Really, all in all, I worked full-time as a locums for about 2.5 to 3 years. Really enjoyed the travel. Really enjoyed the experiences in general. Enjoyed the places that I worked. Enjoyed my assignments. I went back to staffing primarily because we felt like we needed to settle down and get rooted while my son was finishing up high school for the last three years. So, but I've really enjoyed the working back in the clinic and as a primary care provider. I've got a great job. Work for a great healthcare system, small critical access healthcare. And I'm a sole provider in a really small rural clinic, and that's really kind of my cup of tea. But man, the locums business was just awesome, and my wife enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. My son enjoyed it. I really can't say much bad about it, honestly. The only downside, I guess, there is that you don't really have a foothold anywhere, and you don't. If you've got younger kids, it's difficult to homeschool them. If you're not set up for that, we homeschooled for about 5 years. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that my son wanted to go back to public school, I would probably have continued in the locums. I don't know that for sure. I mean, this was a fantastic opportunity I was given, and so I felt like I really couldn't pass it up. And I've not been disappointed at all. So far, it's just been great for me. So, it's the kind of thing where, for the foreseeable future, this is what I'm going to continue to do. But I can still dabble in the locums a little bit on a part-time basis, make extra money, and continue to have those experiences on a much smaller level. Now, let me give you my opinion on different staffing companies. Medcare staffing, they were pretty good. They seemed to pay on time. They seemed to be fairly well organized. Their recruiter was easy to get a hold of. The company seemed to be well organized. I don't know how big they are, but they're a national company, so they must be fairly large. And they dabble in a lot of different things like telemed and other stuff other than just locums. Staff care. Staff care is probably my least favorite company to work for. And it wasn't that it was bad, but and I also forgot that I worked for Barton Associates. I did work for Barton Associates too. I forgot about that. And I don't know which was my least favorite to work for, Barton Associates or Staff Care. They're kind of tied for last. There's a lot of movement inside the company with Staff Care and Barton Associates. They're large companies. They have a lot of people, a lot of recruiters, a lot of people that are getting paid for production, getting paid to set up assignments, getting paid to get people on the rolls. They're both national companies. I always kind of felt like both of those companies, I was really kind of a number, more so than a valued asset. They were pretty good about the payments were good. I didn't have any problem getting paid. I didn't have any problem really getting credentialing done. Most of those big companies have a huge credentialing section office that they have set up to where it's all pretty well handled for you. I just never felt like I was that important to them, because I probably wasn't. The truth being told, I probably wasn't. They have a lot of locums providers, hundreds, I would suspect, hundreds and hundreds of locums providers. Now, the next one up, I guess, would have to be Wilderness, and I really can't say that I could give them a thorough evaluation. I did one stint with them, a 4-month rotation with Wilderness Medical in the state of Washington, and on their end, they handled everything pretty well. Now the only thing about them, they are a small regional company, so they don't have a big credentialing office that handles all the credentialing for you. You're pretty well doing that yourself. You're getting your own licensing, or it was when I did it with them. That's been a couple of years ago, so they may have changed some of this now. You're getting all your own licensing. You're setting all that up, and essentially what they do is they set you up with the job and handle that end of it. But it's a little less organized from that standpoint. But I will say, with Wilderness Medical, you had a little better connection with people. People were easier to get a hold of. It's a smaller company, and so you really kind of got to know the people that you were dealing with a little bit. They would contact you fairly regularly. They didn't seem to have a big turnover at all. I think just recently I was watching where they'd had some people kind of move around inside the company, but they were really transparent about what was going on and who was coming in or who was going to a different position, and who they were hiring. And they primarily do what they say they do. They do wilderness staffing. I have a friend of mine who I got into the locums, or helped get into the locums business a couple of years ago. I won't call his name, but he is a guy that I actually worked with. He was a full-time provider at a hospital that I was working for in a locums capacity, and we got to know each other pretty well because I worked several contracts, and so we became friends. And he became a little disgruntled with his working situation, and so he contacted me about going locums, and one thing led to another, and he went on full time with the company that I was going with, and then since then he has switched over and started working for Wilderness Medical, and he is currently, I just talked to him this week, he is currently on an assignment on the west coast of Alaska in a small, I guess it's called an Inuit village of less than probably 100 people associated with a IHS or tribal medical consortium in Alaska. And he's there for 30 days, and I think he's off for 30 days. I think he does 30 days on, 30 days on, 30 days off. And from what I can tell from the business standpoint, as far as Wilderness is concerned, he's satisfied with him so far. I think he's a little disgruntled with the health system over there in general, but sometimes that's what you get into when you get into the Indian Health Services aspect of locums. It's definitely different than it is in your more traditional health systems. So he's basically gone from being a staff provider to a full-time locums provider over the course of a couple of years, and he's just one of several over time that contacted me, or we became friends on some level, and I helped him kind of through the process of getting into the locums business. And so Wilderness is a good, I say all that to say that Wilderness is a good company, I think, as well, and they seem to care more about their employees. The company that I worked with for so long and ultimately went full time with was National Medical Resources out of Bismarck, North Dakota. And it's a family-owned company. They're a regional company. They primarily staff North Dakota. They do some in Minnesota, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and then they do some telemed work as well. But they are a much smaller company, but they're just big enough and just organized enough to where they can handle their business. They are one of the companies that if you get ready to work and you want to work and you know you're ready to go, these guys can get you rolling in just a couple of weeks. They don't play around because this is what they do. And so if you're willing to come up to the Great White North and work in some very rural, isolated places, these are the people who can get you going. And I worked happily with them for really a couple of years. And for about a year of that, I worked full time with them. And then because of their staffing me in the position that I was in, that's how I ended up with this full-time position, working as a locums provider for about a year. Then they came to me and asked me if I'd be willing to come on staff, and I accepted the position. So, yeah, Barton Associates, they're a little big. You're kind of a number with them, but I can't really complain with Staff Care or Barton Associates. I mean, they weren't horrible, and the assignments were okay. But they weren't my favorite. So I'm not down on anybody really. I think you got to go into it with certain expectations when you're looking for staffing companies, and there are literally hundreds of staffing companies. There are staffing companies that contact me every day, literally, that I've never heard of. I get text messages or calls or emails, sometimes up to 8 or 10 companies a day contact me for locums work. I told my wife today as we were sitting and drinking a cup of coffee, I said, I could go back to locums work tomorrow if I wanted to and not miss a lick. And that's the truth. Once you get your foot in the door and you get some experience and you learn the ropes and you establish a good reputation and you establish yourself as a professional, which I have a video based on that talks almost strictly about professionalism in locums. You can kind of write your own ticket. You can negotiate better salaries. You can go pretty much anywhere you want to go, and do what you want to do and make dang good money doing it. So anyway, that's kind of a little in-depth insight into my locums experience and the companies that I worked with over a 2.5 to 3 year period. I don't do a lot of telemedicine anymore. I have two companies that I still work with. I have cut everybody else pretty much out because I just don't have time anymore. And honestly, I don't want to work that hard anymore. I paid off all my debts, and I don't want to work like a crazy man anymore. So that's kind of where we got to. And we opened a business here where we live. My wife went back to doing hair. We opened a salon. And all that was because of locums work. She has a very, very busy salon now after just a few months of being open. And I don't have to work as hard as I used to. But because I worked hard and I worked in locums, has allowed me to be in the position that I am now. Just a few years of working this way, I paid off all my debts. I paid off all I paid off. I started working locums and I started paying off my student loans. I had about $46,000 in student loans. I paid all those off in about 18 months. I paid off a house, paid off all my cars. I had $50,000 worth of car notes, and I paid them off. I had $46,000 worth of student loans, paid them off. I had $25,000 worth of credit cards. I paid those off. We just don't carry any debt anymore. We have business debt. I borrowed money to open this business and build a building, but I don't consider that personal debt because the business pays for itself, and it's already, self-reliant. So all that was due to working locums. So do I have any regrets about working locums? Absolutely not. Do I miss it sometimes? Yes. Do I like what I'm doing now? Yes. So I have some ambivalence. Will I ever go back to locums? Maybe. Good chance. Probably. I don't know. Anyway, that's my view on locums. If you have any questions, let me know. I've kind of missed doing these videos. I've enjoyed it. I've met a lot of people doing them, and so I'm going to kind of get back into doing them. A little different format probably than you're used to, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe nobody will like it, and I'll stop doing it. So anyway, this is Mark Hill, and I am the Traveling NP, and see you next time.